of elitists that are able to get together and decide the future of the nation. What's really dangerous about it, I think, today is now we have a billionaire class that we never had before, that has really gotten together and decided that they can be that small group. I want to go back a little bit, because all the way back to Plato. Plato was the one who started this, the very concept of you have a small number of well-trained, and he wrote about this, well-trained and well-educated elitists that can decide for everyone. And this concept over and over and over again has appeared in history. Every time that it has appeared, every time that it has been tried, it has been an absolute disaster. People do not, in the long run, want to cooperate with it. They don't want their belongings taken. They don't want forced into certain jobs or certain education. And when they don't, inevitably, this wonderful utopian idea has to be turned into an instrument of force in order to force people to go along with the small group of intellectuals who are guiding it. And we've seen it over and over again, and we see it happening now in the alleged democracies in Europe, where if a political party like came along in Greece, the Conservative Party, came along and started to get influence. There was an immigrant killed near a train station, and the intellectuals that control the ruling parties there used as an example to arrest and jail the leaders of that party, outlaw the party because it was gaining too much influence. And we see this happening again and again throughout Europe. We saw the vilification of Marine Le Pen, the censorship, the horrendous censorship that goes on, so that many opinions are not allowed to be shared publicly because they're declared hate speech. So yes, we have that march, and we have it socially, we have it economically. We see the government controlling more and more of the economy, and when that happens, the sphere of liberty that Frederick Hayek talked about begins to shrink. And then socially, we see the control of the society of this kind of utopian thing. We're going to control your children. We're going to control your habits. We're going to control your social the social aspects of your life until you conform to this autonomous this thing that we want, that we think can bring about this perfect perfect world. Again, totally ignoring the nature of humanity.
Very interesting, and by extension, and I'm glad you went back to Plato, and I think it's important to understand the road, the utopian road to hell is a long one. And I mean that by going back in history, of course, and William Murray does go back and to really going back to the satanic influence in utopian tyrannies, to Sir Thomas More's Utopia and such, Sparta and Plato's Republic inspired utopian tyrants. Very interesting works, all very interesting chapters, that is. Let me ask this question, because I've been hearing this a lot more and more lately. The phrase cultural Marxists. Now, in your book, you've got a chapter called Cultural Utopians. Same thing? Cultural?
Yeah, it really is. The cultural utopians, first of all, the reason I use the word utopian in the whole concept and the whole idea of the book is there are many different faces have come along to create some kind of a utopian existence, and we tend to separate them. For instance, we tend to separate communism and fascism. We tend to look at Stalin and Hitler as two different things, one on the right and one on the left. Actually, they weren't. They were exactly the same thing. They both envisioned a small group of people coming together, being able to establish a utopian society for their people and ultimately the whole world. The only difference between communism, the radical communism of the Soviet Union and Joseph Stalin, and the National Socialism of Adolf Hitler was the means to get there and what you called it. People forget Hitler was a socialist. When he came in, 50% of the means of production was seized by the government. Suddenly, people didn't own their entire business; they owned half of it. With communism, all of this went to the government. Hitler used the slaughter of the Jews in order to finance his thousand-year Reich, and where did all the Autobahn and all this army and great army and all this technology came from? It came from robbing 7 million Jews. It just wasn't about anti-Semitism. It was about theft. The theft of tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. Even the clothes of the Jews and their gold teeth were stolen in order to finance the construction of his utopia for the Aryan race. On the communist side, the same thing: confiscation. And the killing of the gentry, all the army officers, the seizing of property, the exile. We talk about, yes, Hitler killed I think 8 or 9 million people, including the Jews, and robbed from them. Joseph Stalin and Lenin, they probably killed 20 or 30 million in order to do the same thing. So it isn't two different things, and we can give all these different names, and we can give the social utopians in the United States and in the Western world a different name too, but in actuality they are one thing. They're people that believe that they are so smart and that they have such great wisdom that they can create a village, Hillary Clinton style, that they can create the village that can, a small group of highly trained and wonderful intellectuals and intelligent people that can create a society that benefits all. And of course, what it really benefits is them. If you look at Thomas More's Utopia, everybody was allowed a certain amount of food except the leaders, they got more. The same thing in Plato's Republic. In Russia, the communists had their own hotel system, their own medical system. They were separate from everybody else, and the same was true of the Nazis.
Exactly. And as I was reading this, I thought of today. As I read the book, it was before the violence we saw this past weekend. But I can formulate my question now, and after reading this, my question, I guess, is this: where we're at today with what we're seeing, regardless of the violence or the recent violence, just the total landscape, the political landscape. It seems to me, and please correct me if I am incorrect about this, it seems to me the groups, the individuals who are responsible for the violence we're seeing today, this push toward this collectivism, they are responsible for what we're seeing today. I mean, I believe that. And the pushback is, of course, the whiplash, the cultural whiplash, I call it. And I was talking on my my morning show this morning. I was talking about the difference between Obama and Trump, and the result, the difference between the two has caused this cultural whiplash, but because where we were on before, the road was straight toward this utopian hell. Now Donald Trump has come forth and put a stop to that, or put a bend in the road, and of course, causing us whiplash. Is that a correct assessment? I mean, how would you equate, if at all, or explain what we're seeing in terms of violence today?
That's an interesting question. Nobody blamed Barack Obama for Ferguson, Missouri,
right,
or Baltimore, Maryland, and nobody. There were racists involved in that too. But there is a similarity that I think everybody is missing here, and it does have to do with cultural purity, which is another issue, and it has to do with our college campuses and things. But there is another issue here. The people, the blacks of Ferguson, the blacks of Baltimore, the African Americans, felt like they rioted because they felt like they were being repressed, and that somebody was given an advantage over them. Now, let me cause us now great grief and horrible trolling by internet snipers. What happened in Charlottesville was identical. The riot there was by a group of individuals who felt underprivileged and targeted